Good morning to everybody. I am feeling a lot of energy this morning. I know it's rained, but um, what we are about to do today is so important, and it's filling me with a lot of excitement today. So let me really welcome you to today's gathering. It's just 1 hour after 9 o'clock, so I think we've done well because I saw the rains, and I know friends who have been cut off from their homes can't get out of their house. So I think most of you have done well to be here. But it does convey to me the importance you place on this particular activity. Let me welcome you also on behalf of our promoters today, myself from CDD, our friends from Star Ghana Foundation, Democracy Hub, Oliver is here, um, and all the CSOs who have been meeting since May, trying to anticipate the work that needs to be done to make sure that we have a successful constitutional review process. Everybody understands that we've been trying to, let's say, amend the constitution for a very, very long time. We all have been, we've sort of put out the problems that we think we have with our current governance architecture. The dominance of the executive presidency. We've talked about how literally politicians have held us in shackles. They dominate every space of our society. Our politics, our economics, our society, our social interactions, these days even our technology. So in a way, it is Independence Day for everybody. If we succeed, I think even the politicians, they don't realize it because they've held us in shackles and they are not allowing us to breathe. They have to dictate everything we do in this space. They themselves are getting a lot of pressure from the people. When the people keep coming to them, they don't understand why. But when you have to decide what we eat, how we, work, what we should say, then everybody will look up to you to provide those answers. So what we are asking is that free us so that we can free you. That's all. And that really, for me, is the essence of this constitutional reform, right? We really have a rare opportunity to reimagine our governance architecture after almost over 30 years of this experiment. And the bad news is that time is running out. I think if you've seen some of the Afrobarometer findings, from round to round, people are feeling despondent about this democracy and its ability to deliver development. And it's not just in Ghana. But even we as Ghanaians who are touted as, having a good democracy, beacon of hope, all of those things, we are not in a good place. And if we keep organizing elections and we are not able to deliver on the promises of elections, at some point people will start looking for alternatives. And that is what we have to avoid. I don't think it's in anybody's interest. We've seen what is going on around in all these zombie elections that are going on in Africa. People are just sleepwalking into elections, and so we have to we have an opportunity to avoid that, and that's why we are here. We are. This is like our third time of trying to amend this constitution. And they say third time is a charm, right? So we can't let this opportunity slip. So what we are asking is that this is a rare shot. This is, the constitution is an expression, the written expression of the people and how they want to organize themselves. So if we want to change it, then we as citizens have to be at the forefront of it. Yes, the constitution says Parliament has a role, everybody has a role, but we, the people, have to be the drivers. We have to ensure that our voice, our aspirations are all captured in whatever would emerge, so that we can live with it. So, without saying much, as I said, this is the formal beginning of a struggle, but also a struggle that we to do with love, with commitment, with the expectation that if we get through this, it would basically signal a new dawn for us, for our future. So let me welcome all of you to today's event. And then I'll use the opportunity to call my sister Eunice from Star Ghana Foundation also to say a few words. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you very much, Kojo, and good morning to everyone. I'm glad that the heavy rains could not stop us from having this event. Early on in the year, Kojo, Oliver, and I met in a meeting outside of Accra. And we started a conversation about what we could do to organize civil society around the constitutional review. We've had several conversations after the initial one, and I'm really happy that our conversations did not remain as being, only aspirations. But indeed, we've been able to take some actions culminating into the launch of the CS platform on constitutional review. Kojo has asked me to talk about the purpose, and I'm sure that the purpose was also communicated in the invitation that came to you. I will emphasize that. And I've also been asked to talk a bit about how we conceptualize our organizing. And so I will do those two, and after which my colleague Oliver will come and take us through some strategic plans. I think as civil society organizations and also citizens, we have a great opportunity to influence how we are governed. I think many of us, we are still young. We haven't, observed a real constitutional reform. I mean, for me, my first encounter was in 2010 when the Professor John Atta Mills of blessed memories commissioned that exercise. And as civil society, we, influenced again with, our proposals. We participated in consultations. We had several engagements with the committee, something that we do very well. But as we all know, the constitutional reforms did not, transition beyond a report. And many of us are concerned and even afraid that if we don't organize better this time, history will repeat itself. We will go through a very elaborate process of making recommendations, having meetings here and there, and nothing happens. And I don't think any of us wishes that for our country anymore. And so the CS platform on constitutional review is considered a backbone or a space where we promote collaboration among different actors engaged in the constitutional review process. And I think we have learned that the securing reforms goes beyond proposals and the submission of memoranda and participation in consultation to including how we engage the entire political process beyond issuing of the reports and to the actions that follow later on. And I think that's what we want this platform to support us do. That as civil society organizations, we define for ourselves around which issues we are going to organize because we are not homogeneous, right? People are in different places, have different aspirations and expectations. But as civil society citizens, there are common issues that we would want to rally around, and this platform is to support us to do that and begin to anticipate the issues that would emerge, the oppositions that will arise around the reports, which we understand would be released, in November. It should have been released in October, but we are expecting it in November. So anticipating all the political processes that will emerge from that report. And so that's what we will be doing. And today is really to build consensus on how we would be organized, how we would be engaging, bearing in mind that civil society is at different places. Most of us here are those working in Accra, but there are more outside of Accra. And so we thought of a structure. I don't know if it's up. Yes. So it's one of the things we would want to discuss and build consensus on as a platform. All right. Please go to the last one. Yes. So this is our proposal. As I said, today is really to build consensus among us on how we proceed from here. I believe there are some decisions that we may not be able to make here because we are expecting some more CS groups that are not here. So we do understand we will have to take outside of this place some engagement, and so those would inform the finalization or the agreement we reach. So I talked about the purpose overall of the platform. In terms of the structure, we are looking at having a coordination committee or team, or others would call it a steering committee, and the foundational work has been done or is being done by CDD-Ghana Foundation and the Democracy Hub, but we want to put that out also for conversation and see which other organizations we can co-opt into the coordinating committee, which will act as a thought leader and also the administration for the platform. We also propose to have regional platforms and have regional representatives, you know, who will be coordinating their platform. So we are looking at a very decentralized process and engagement of CSOs or CS actors around the constitutional review. And then we have the district platforms. I was having a conversation with one of the seniors this morning, and we were thinking, do we really need to have the district platforms as well? And we would want to have some observations from you. So the idea is really to build that consensus as we gather to today. There's an elephant in the room that I would want to clear quickly. So you all know that the executive directors of Star Ghana Foundation and CDD are members of the Constitutional Review Committee. So Professor Prempe, who is the chair, and Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, who is a member. And I wanted to highlight, because it will come up, that these two are serving in their individual capacity in the Constitutional Review Committee. And the work we are doing as promoters of the CS platform is informed by our organizations. So I wanted to make that distinction clearly, that our organizations are those facilitating, and the executive directors are individuals in those organizations and are representing themselves in their own capacity in the Constitutional Review Committee. On that note, I know we will have a lot of time to discuss this further. I will hand over to Vera. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eunice. At this point, we'll receive remarks from Holman, who is the head of political and governance with the FCDO. FCDO is supporting us for this convening. It will be good. We'd like to hear from Holman.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, wow, that's good. My name is Human Nuruzi. I'm the head of political security and governance at the British High Commission in Accra. And the reason I'm here is, as Eunice said, to offer congratulations to CDD, Star Ghana, and Democracy Hub on the work they're doing around the constitutional review mechanism, supported by the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, the UK government. So, honourable guests, esteemed civil society leaders, development partners, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. It is a privilege to be here today on behalf of the British High Commission to witness the launch of the civil society organisations platform on constitutional reform in Ghana. Thank you, CDD, for the invitation. This initiative marks a significant milestone in Ghana's democratic journey. The UK government is proud to support efforts that strengthen governance, promote inclusive participation, and uphold the rule of law. We believe that constitutional reform, when driven by broad-based citizen engagement, can deepen democracy and foster more accountable institutions. Ghana has long been a leader in democratic governance across Africa. Yet, as with all democracies, there is always room to evolve, to ensure that the Constitution reflects the aspirations of all its citizens, especially women, youth, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities. You, civil society, is central to this process. The formation of this platform demonstrates the power of collective action and the importance of civic voices in shaping national policy. Civil society organizations bring expertise, grassroots connections, and a commitment to equity that are essential for meaningful reform. The UK government commends the platform's commitment to transparency, evidence-based advocacy, and inclusive dialogue. These principles align closely with our own values and development priorities. We are particularly encouraged by the platform's efforts to engage citizens across regions and sectors, ensuring that constitutional reform is not just a legal exercise, but a truly national conversation. As a development partner, the UK remains committed to supporting Ghana's democratic institutions and civil society. We see this platform as a vital space for collaboration, learning, and progress. The UK government look forward to working with you to ensure that constitutional reform is participatory, inclusive, and transformative. And finally, let me close by congratulating all those who have contributed to this initiative. CDD, Star Ghana, Democracy Hub, and all the partners here. Your leadership and vision are helping to shape a more just and a democratic future for Ghana. The UK government will continue to support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Homan. We also have some representative from the Danish Embassy, the Dutch, European Union as well. Thank you for coming. At this point, we'll have a presentation on the context of the constitutional review process and the role of civil society. Oliver has done this over and over again, and every time there's something interesting to learn about the whole process. And so I will invite Oliver with Democracy Hub and also Face the Country to give us that presentation, all the things we are looking at for, what's the process like, what's the committee's work, and even after the submission of the report, that's where the bigger task or assignment is, and how do we fit into the whole process. So Oliver, I think that we need to, this is the time for you to give us your presentation.
Okay. I understand that my presentation is going to be projected. A few weeks ago, I was at another event where I was rebelling at the idea of using PowerPoint. That I said I was no longer going to use PowerPoint anymore because I want to hog all the attention and for people to focus on me. But we're going to try to do a blend of both. My job here is to try to have a conversation about the context within which we are having this process and why the launch is twice important, I think. But I want to start from a point of perhaps a little anecdote. When we're doing this the first time around, the first constitution review process, one of the things that we had introduced was consultations by SMS. Now, we learned this from the Kenyans. When the Kenyans were doing this, they also kind of employed text messaging in part of the process. Now, one of the first texts that came in through their text messaging platform was somebody asking whether the new constitution was going to make beer cheaper. So I imagine the task of the lawyers there who had to text back that the constitution guarantees freedom, not free drinks. And as we are going through this process as well, we have to open ourselves to the cynicism of a population or a people that have for so long become distrustful of anything. You know? And so I remember Professor Tuguba and I worked on a paper called If the Constitution We Go Chop, meaning that we have to find a way to be able to bring this to bread and butter conversation for a lot of people. We have to be open to the conversation as to whether or not the new constitution would end galamsey. These are critical questions that we must be prepared for as we even come into the conversation. What I'm going to be trying to do first of all is try to set, there are some people who are familiar with the constitution process and others who are not. So what I'm going to do is try to give a framework of how the amendment process looks like. And then I would go from there so that we can all understand what it is we are anticipating or so we have a shared understanding of what we're supposed to be doing. So as some of you may already know, the Constitution is, for amendment purposes, divided into two parts. So we have the entrenched parts and the non-entrenched parts. And entrenched and non-entrenched only means, the only difference between them is how we amend them. So when it comes to entrenched parts of the Constitution, it means that it is more difficult to amend, and then the non-entrenched is slightly less easier. But that is deceptive, because that's a language which we continue to use. But in fact, what it means is that for the non-entrenched, for the entrenched part, the people of Ghana themselves have the opportunity to intervene in the conversation. And for the non-entrenched part, the people of Ghana have to do so through their representatives in parliament. So one is not more easier than the other, it's just a different process. Now, it is important then, as we're coming to go along the process also for civil society, to understand the differences, because it also has an implication for how we guarantee the integrity of the process, and also how we know where and when to intervene. So let me just give a sort of examples of the parts of the Constitution that are entrenched. So anything that concerns fundamental human rights under the Constitution is entrenched. I know that there's a lot of conversations, having been involved myself with some of the consultations that the committee has had, that a lot of the interventions have gone to the fundamental human rights chapter of the Constitution, both from those we can consider to be progressives within the space and those who we think perhaps are a little more conservative. At least we can all agree that for the past few years, the most single issue that the religious conservatives have mobilized around has been on sexual minority rights. So those conversations come within fundamental human rights. Then representation of the people is about how we vote. Then anything that concerns the president, everything, whether or not the president should pay tax, the term, the appointment powers, everything that we think about the presidency, immunity of the president, all come under Chapter 8, which means that all of that, anything that changes there must go to the people for amendment. Then when it comes to Parliament, Articles 93 and 106, concerning the composition of Parliament, the eligibility, and also the lawmaking process comes under there. Under Judiciary, I know if there's anything that has generated a lot of conversation, of course, is the process for how we remove judicial officers. It's also one of the things that must go to the people for referendum. Decentralization, I think that we are all reeling from the win of Zoran Mamdani in New York. For us to get into conversation about electing our own mayors, there's also that falls into a part that the people must have a say in. Means that everything else then not captured here, the others which I've not highlighted, like the Constitution, the nature of the Constitution being supreme, and others also fall under entrenched. And outside of those, it means that the rest must go through Parliament. Now, what about the steps for how we amend the entrenched provisions? So when there's any amendment bills that are looking to amend the entrenched part of the Constitution, it will take a minimum of 7 months before the question is put to referendum. This is because the Constitution requires that at least 6 months before you introduce the bill in Parliament, you must have gazetted it and wait. Okay? So there's the initiation of the bill 6 months prior to its introduction in Parliament. Then when you introduce it in Parliament, it must go to the Council of State. Sorry. It must go to the Council of State for another 30 days for them to give their opinion on it. Now, perhaps when I come to some of the engagement parts, we can tease this out a bit, because I know that a lot of people have gotten themselves excited about the possibility of deleting the Council of State. But it must first go to them for them to give their opinion as to whether they should be deleted. So that's something that we'll talk about as well. Then after that, it then goes to members of Parliament. Now, I have said here that it's subjected to debate among members of Parliament, but I need to be actually frank here. We have never done this before, okay, when it comes to the entrenched provisions. But we have done the unentrenched provisions. And when we did unentrenched provisions, parliamentarians were insisting that, and they did in fact amend what was presented to them. So this is one of the dangers we'll come to. So the possibility that they would want to debate that is high, and I've in fact had that position expressed by other members of Parliament, that they want to debate it. But the Constitution ordinarily will require that it is sent directly to a referendum after the first reading. The referendum, there's no timeline from when it is introduced and when the referendum must be held. We know that that's something that the Electoral Commission is supposed to handle. And presumably, all the education that goes into how we organize public elections must also attend how we organize the referendum. I think since post-92, none of us have ever gone to referendum before. And whether or not we're still going to vote and have the ink on our fingernails is something that we don't know. So whether or not they're going to mimic the processes for election, that's something that has to be fleshed out. There are no CIs, or the Electoral Commission has not developed any rules for how they will organize a referendum. Now, if the referendum passes, and I'll come to what it requires for it to pass, then it goes back to Parliament. The Constitution says that Parliament must then pass it. It says Parliament shall pass it, so it doesn't give a quota for what numbers are required to pass it, which is why I've suggested is by a simple majority. Again, we don't have a timeline between when they are done, when it goes to Parliament, when it's put on the legislative agenda, when they do pass it, before it goes to the President, and for the President to assent it. Again, for the normal bill, there's a timeline within which the President must assent. There's no timeline. So the reason why I'm highlighting these things is to emphasize where it can get stuck. Okay. When it's assented by the President, the Speaker issues a certificate of compliance to show that all the various processes I've mentioned have been complied with. Now, the non-entrenched, which is the other process, it also starts with initiation of a bill. In fact, there are a bill and must be published in the Gazette and must be done twice. The first time, at least 3 months before it is initiated in Parliament, and the second one at least 10 days before. The good thing is that the Constitution doesn't say anything whether we can do both at the same time, so that at the time we're publishing for the entrenched, we can also publish for the non-entrenched, which presumably we can do them at the same time to allow the clock to run together. Again, it is also read, sent to Council of State for advice, and then brought back to Parliament for debate and discussion. The Constitution doesn't use these words, but practice has shown us that that is what has happened in the past. That there were amendments to the first time we did this. You know, for those of us who are young enough to remember Akai and Rawlings controversy, which led to the first one, that's what happened. And there was a lot of debate also about the dual citizenship one as well that led to changes in the House. What is curious, however, some could argue, is that once they have passed it, even though they are claiming and insisting that it is the normal legislative process and they can amend, the Constitution says when it is passed, the President shall assent. Meaning the President cannot also claim to have the normal legislative process whereby they can refuse to assent or not assent, which you can read it to mean that Parliament is not supposed to change anything. But the practice has shown us that something different has happened. I'm trying to both purge this computer somewhere and then hold the mic, which you can't serve two masters clearly. So that's it in some regard for the process. Now, once Parliament passes it means that it has become law. Okay? Now, I want to go a bit into the implications for us. First, the process part of this. That we all know that within our constitutional framework, unlike, say, the Kenyan one, we, as the civil society or the people, do not have any other mechanism by which we can initiate amendment of the Constitution. So we have to be able to follow the executive in the process that they have initiated. Everything must originate in Parliament, as we have seen. There's no other mechanism to go directly to referendum, for instance, without engaging Parliament. But it also means that we have to, first of all, see different timelines within the process as how we then mobilize key constituents who would help us navigate the process and also influence the process. Okay, and I'll come a bit more to the referendum part of that as well. It means we must also, like I was saying, recognize the role of the Council of State and view them as a body that is recognizable. What is curious, however, is that we do not know exactly what is the product of the bill being referred to the Council of State does. Whether they can add to is not clear. Whether they can stop it is not clear. So we really don't know what input they bring, because if you remember for the entrenched part, once it comes back from them, it goes to referendum. So we are not able to say, even if they had anything to say, it will change the question that goes to referendum or anything. There's nothing that says one way or the other. Okay. Then, of course, the monitoring and lobbying, I'll come back to this point. The first question is around the turnout issue regarding the entrenched provisions. The Constitution requires that at least 40% of voters who are registered must turn up to vote. And out of them, 75% must endorse the changes that are being proposed. Okay. This is a very high threshold. In the last election, the voters register has over 18 million people. I imagine that before we go to referendum, the commission might open it up for those who have now turned 18 to register. So we're going into the over 20 million likely people. And if that's the case, my math is bad, but I think we need about 8 million people to show up to come and vote. That's high. That's very high. What I've done is that because we don't have an example of a referendum, I've looked at examples of turnout, particularly for the MMDC elections. Because some of the whispers in the grapevines that we may likely tie the referendum question to also the MMDC elections, maybe we should look at the turnout during those years. So the first time we ever voted, that was the highest we got, 59.3. This is when the PNDC said we're testing democracy at the grassroots level. So here we were very eager. And then after that, it went down to 29.3%. After we voted for the 92 elections, 29.3 is very low. Well, subsequently thereafter, we went to 41% in 2002, then 33.1%, 35.5%, 30.6%, 2015, 2019, 37, we jumped up a little bit, and then we went back down in 2023. Now, it's important to somehow even disaggregate this data, because in the last elections we had, Greater Accra and Kumasi, Ashanti region, which have the highest number of people, also have the lowest turnout. Accra had 18%, and Kumasi 33%. So those are the main epicenters that are likely to drive people and have the most people registered on the ballot. I think between them, they count for more than 50% of registered voters. So that's concerning. Now, are there any lessons for us from the last process since we've been here before? The first thing is that in terms of how the content of what the Constitution Review Commission eventually produced, civil society was amazing in terms of how we mobilized around the number of civil society groups that met the commission. There was a lot of them, you know. So in terms of the content that came up in that 1,000-page report, a lot of it reflected the input from various civil actors. It is after the work where the problem comes. Because the Constitution Review Commission had advised that we create a Constitution Review Implementation Committee, which essentially was working behind closed doors. And we had very little, sorry, let me go back. Okay, actually I can go forward and come back. So that we had very little input from CSOs in the process of what's supposed to be the implementation committee's work. And a lot of that was done, and then that's when it started dying down in terms of people's understanding of what the process was. Also, even though we knew that the Constitution Review Committee was set up by government white paper, by the chapter 23, which is the Commission of Inquiry, and that the government was bound to issue a white paper, there was no mobilized strategy around how to influence government itself in terms of its reaction in the white paper itself. The result being that the government rejected some of the most transformative recommendations, and the ones it was okay with, it okayed. So that was the danger then for what happened then. As I was saying, the main thing was the process to ensure that this is safe landed. And I think that we have, in the process, also developed a language of blaming the political actors that we couldn't ensure that the last process didn't achieve its goal. But in many parts, it's also a failure of civil society itself. Because the constitution review process, we have to agree it's an agenda that civil society has driven for a very long time. That if it is back on the table, it is because of civil society have not let it go. So if we let it, after the work is done and the recommendations are made, and then we go back to bed, then we have not ensured that, having gone through the 9-month term, that the baby is safely delivered. So that's what has to change, I suppose, in this process. And we have to be more focused on the process question rather than, only the content. And I say this because the ideas around the content have gone on for so long that we know the key issues and where they're going to fall anyway. But then how do we ensure that then we're able to get one over the political elite? Then, of course, there was also very little public mobilization around it. There was a lot of enthusiasm in participating in the consultation process, but how we mobilize people to keep the pressure on and all of that, that infrastructure, if it existed, was demobilized very quickly when the report came out. Now, I've suggested that this process, yes, is slightly different, but potentially a little more risky. And I say this one, first of all, because of how it was initiated. Now, some may see some value in it, but others may fear the process. Because we know at least that the first one was set up as a commission of inquiry, which was that there were constitutional procedures to be followed. The government could not just shelve the report. They were obliged to issue a government white paper within 6 months after the report came up. In this case, we have a committee that is at once advisory on the president. It was not set up under any legal framework. There are no commitments and there's no constitutional processes that guide us as to what to do. And so these are things which we don't already have defined and that we must then find ways to secure. The second thing is that, yes, we have an overwhelming majority in parliament, a government in power with 2/3 majority in parliament. But inherent in that is the danger. Because, one, it means that they have the mandate to ignore the opposition in parliament. And if they can ignore the opposition, they can ignore you as well. So it can create a yen-to-obia phenomenon because we can get anything passed if we want it to go. So that's something that we have to be careful of. I mean, parliament generally doesn't listen, and now armed with 2/3 majority in parliament, that's something that we need to think about. Also, for the first time, we have a one-term president who is initiating the process. I say one term, he's already served his first term. So he's in his last term. And critically, we're already going into the second year. From what I've described, any referendum process is only going to happen in 2023. At that point, his own party would have already elected, 2027, yes, a new candidate. And so the one-term president's ability to mobilize people is also perhaps doubtful, or we have to be mindful of that. Which feeds into the second one. We already know that there are people at the presidency who are very keen on, physical activity, for lack of a better word. But what we have not seen emerge is a champion for constitution. None of them have taken this on as their baby or wanting to, so interested in the idea. It seems like the president is alone when he speaks on this issue. Like, for instance, the last government, even though the president was not very keen on it, Che Mensah, for instance, was a big push behind it. And you need that kind of big push for something like this to succeed. So we don't have that. The third point I talk about is the no political party subsidies. Now, the difference, if you look at the national elections and then the MMDC elections. In the MMDC elections, there's over 60,000 people that we elect. 60,000 people that are contesting for positions for about 6,000 positions. Yet, turnout is lower than when we're electing 200 and something people and one president. I mean that the vast majority of the mobilization capacity in our politics is carried by the political parties. They drive turnout out. So, the first squeeze which I identify, which is the overwhelming majority, if the NDC goes alone and doesn't listen to the opposition will not be very incentivized to help drive turnout out. But even outside of that, the idea of a constitutional referendum is very abstract and it's not directly linked to the idea of you can get a position which is something which drives people to come out to vote or to mobilize or spend their own money to help subsidize the national mobilizing people budget. So if we don't have that, then somehow we have to step in and find the money to bring people out somehow. So that's something that we need to think about as well as some of the risks. Now, I've outlined some of the things I think perhaps we can all deliberate about, which is strategic objectives for us in this process now. Put this down. First of all, this part sufficient. It has been done sufficiently, I think, which is engaging with the Prempeh Committee regarding the content of. She will take care. Engaging with the Prempeh Committee with regards to what the content would be, and I know some conversations also going on about the form of the report as well. But it is still critical because we're trying to build what is inherently a fragile coalition. That in order for a lot more people to support the process, we all have to agree that some people will win some and will lose some. But at least some have to win something to be incentivized to continue to push forward. A couple of days ago, Vera and I were in South Africa, and some people had accosted us, I would say, to suggest to us that if proportional representation is not on it, they are not going to support the process going forward. So some people are looking for specific things, and if they don't begin to see it, then we have some fragility there. And I don't know, in any event, we did it the first time around, and I think the Prempeh Committee will also do it. There are certain freebies you would have to give in order to be able to get people along. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about, of course, as I said, that we need process guarantees, and this conversation has been ongoing within the space and some of the things we have talked about. From the government, one of the low-hanging one is, unconditional public release of the report in itself is one of them. Can we get a commitment that when amendment bills come to Parliament, it's not going to be interfered with? Is there a commitment that we can get? I had mooted the very undemocratic idea at some point that we pass them under a certificate of urgency. It limits interference, but there's also the process democratic question of whether it should be debated a little bit more in Parliament before we go forward. There's also, and also tied to the process guarantee, is this suggestion about a mixed drafting committee. So typically, all bills that are presented on behalf of the government are drafted by the Attorney General's department. In this instance, however, all those who were involved in the first non-entrenched bill that we sent to Parliament have all retired and gone. Nobody currently in the Attorney General's department has any experience drafting any bill that affects the Constitution. And so there's avenue for us to have a conversation that this should not be only left to the Attorney General, but that should be a mixed committee of civil society and also international experts. Some of the examples we've seen on the continent, whether in South Africa or in Kenya in recent times, we've had people with expertise also being brought on board, that we have then a mixed committee that takes care of translating what the report would be into drafting. Then the legislative process itself, are there going to be public hearings? Are we going to have town hall meetings that the government is itself going to cover the cost of going and what it is on the roadshow? So whether we gazette it and then the period within, we do all of that work, is it something that we also need to have a conversation about? Even within ourselves as well, what is the process for which we ensure that more voices get in and understand and they need to be able to bring people out? Which obviously naturally feed into also our engagement with strategic folks within the space about what the various interests are, how those interests can be negotiated, deferred, who are the people to engage within the parties, outside of the parties, and some of the power holders that we know within our system. So these are things that also, I think the platform coming together would sit down and flesh out and think through how we go about. So this is a high level in many respects. Now, when the political parties are absent, then we also need to hold the public rallies. We also need to occupy the stadiums and drive the demand and the push for people to feel energized about the process and what that looks like for them to get involved in the process. And so that's one of the key things that should be on our agenda to be able to ensure this. Now, even as we put together this platform, I'm also kind of wondering that who watches the watchman, even within ourselves? What is accountability? How do we hold ourselves accountable within these processes as well? How are we checking what is ongoing? Where do we blow alarm? Or what is the cause of concern? So in broad view, I think this will be all for my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Oliver. I think this is a point where we all say, and just process. There's a lot of information. And so I think we'll open up for comments, questions, maybe between 4 or 5 people at a time. Oliver could respond, Kojo, Eunice, so we could get some. Yes, please let me see your hand and then the microphone will be sent to you. Okay.
Right, thank you very much. My name is Ampoma Isaac, and I work for Concern Health Education Project. So just a bit of context. It is good we begin to work on our constitution, but I know some constitution has grown to about 200 years. Is it that so urgent that there's that need to work on it? And working on it, what are the contingencies for the gaps? Is it going to be worse than before? Or, so the anticipation is the current one better than what we are about to do? Or what is the guarantee that what we are about to do will even be better? So that's the first context. I have other more to support the subject matter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mine has to do with the risks that were just talked about. And I'm wondering, considering the stakes, involved, should government, for instance, want to bulldoze its way through, is there room in the process for litigation? And is that something that we think we can take up? Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself to us?
So I'm Ketchups Atengle. I'm also with Democracy Hub.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then this lane, you have to find somebody to ask your question or comment. I'll come back. And here.
Thank you very much. My name is Poshedu Mensah. I represent the children and the youth. So where do we fall in this, and how can we have our voice heard? Thank you.
Okay. Maybe the last. Okay.
No, I'm here.
Your hand. Okay.
Yeah. So 2 quick comments. One, and questions. When you look at the process, it really requires for us to properly sit and plan, not like the once a while conference kind of approach, so that we can take the issues and actually plan around them. At least we know what the key controversial issues are going to be. And I've been worried about what our strategies around neutralizing some of those issues, potential issues, or compromising, because at some point it may require compromise. Sheila is here and Titechiwa is here. We work on a legislation that took us 7 years because there was one controversial issue in it, and then we're debating among ourselves, should we give it up or should we push it? And it took 7 years. So for instance, one of the reasons why people want to go to parliament is because they want to become ministers. And so we cannot have a constitutional review, a new constitution provision that allows that to continue. But the people are also there because they want to be ministers. And looking at their influential role in the process, are they going to be willing to give that process up, that privilege an opportunity to be ministers up. So what should be our strategy? Do we compromise or do we put our foot down? And what happens if it ends up compromising the whole process? So those are things that I think, so my major push would be for us to have proper sit down, whether it's through committees or whatever, to pick the issues and strategize around them, because in anticipation of what we are expecting. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the last, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank the presenters for this reality check. I think that many of us think that once the report is submitted, then this happens. So the steps that we need to go through, even with the best of will, it looks like it will take no less than a year to get anything done. And also the fact that these are political-driven processes, and as this is going on, other things are going on. I wanted to touch on something that Eunice said about the structure, because clearly it's going to need a lot of mobilization, explanation, and I do think that the district structures are going to be critical. If we need to turn out the vote on these issues, but we restrict things to mainly a national and regional level, how then do we get the districts fully participating? So I think that the structures that we set up must also be tied to the issues and the processes that we are anticipating. But I think the clarity with which we've been taking through both the entrenched and the non-entrenched, even if we forget the spoilers and the pushers, it's very sobering. It is really sobering, and there's a lot of work. And I think that we have learned our lesson, that the last time we were dependent, thinking that it was just the political will. It was easy to blame the government for what they did not do. But like the Christian prayer where you are praying for the sins that you commit and the good that you didn't do. So now this is the good that we didn't do, and we are going to have to be really focused from the start. I even wonder whether, it's the report has still not been issued, so we are ahead, but we are going to have to run. And my worry is how we combine it with all our many activities to get it done. But it is a lot of work ahead, and we are going to need a lot of support when we talk about all these town hall meetings, etc. How are we going to finance them? And maybe we also have to be innovative in terms of just how we are going to do things. So this is already the time to start spreading the message at local levels and to get commitments. So the champions should be not just within the presidency, not just within CSOs, but in the society at large. And we need to start identifying them and to see how we will work with them. So perhaps even this platform, how we've conceptualized it, we may need to broaden it and to see more allies who can be brought on board to get this done. Thank you.
Can we take two more and then we can have three of you respond?
Thank you very much. I'm Kingsley Ohenabamo. I represent Defense Network for Democracy and Asante Foundation for Africa Peace and Development. We want to commend the organizers, the lead conveners, CDD, Ghana, Democracy Hub, and also the sponsors and all other allies. In fact, the first question we want to ask is, how do we harmonize the previous constitutional review reports, the Professor Fiajo's commission, and the one that was commissioned under His Excellency former President Akufo-Addo, and the current one? How do we work together to bring all of them together, to harmonize them,
and no other. How do we reconcile the previous report as to how this new one that is coming to merge them together, making one? And the next question is, how do we also identify other key stakeholders across the country, traditional authorities, churches, private sector, because this is everybody's business. The constitutional review process, it is not the CSOs, though we the CSOs are lead, but we are proposing that we need to include all these actors so that we can make the platform very great across the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then we'll take the last one.
I'm Jennifer from Budget, and my question has to do with more of mobilization and awareness. So at what point are we really bringing in everyone inclusively to start the mobilization process? And I know when Oliver was talking, he made mention about having rallies, bringing people together. How are we going to really facilitate that process? Because rally is, like he mentioned in his presentation, you need a lot of the political parties to be able to drive people out of their homes. And if we are starting this kind of initiative that we want every citizen to be actively involved, how are we, what's the process? What would we have in place to facilitate that process? Thank you.
Thank you. So Eunice, Kojo, Oliver, Oliver should start. Okay, then Antesta.
The very first one is about, the necessity of this, considering some example you're giving, and I think you're talking about the U.S. Constitution, being there for 200 years. The first black chief Supreme Court justice that was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall, said something. That the U.S. Constitution, when it was done, was not perfect when it was done. It took a civil war and 27 amendments to get him to the Supreme Court. So there's no document that in itself by longevity acquires perfection. So it's a consistent process of trying to improve. And we are hoping that some of the fine minds that have been gathered on this would help improve the current document that we have. Ketchup, you talked about the spoilers, constitutional litigation. I think we can all be guaranteed that that is likely to happen. I didn't talk about, there's so many different spoilers we can anticipate, but the likelihood of constitutional litigation, somebody going and saying that XYZ has been followed, it's likely to happen. I'll give an anecdote that when we were doing the first one, our spoilers were Kwesi Prempeh and Professor Kuku Azar, who went to the Supreme Court about whether the presidency should initiate it or Parliament should initiate it. So best believe that those are going to come up. Particularly, of the most difficult concern is on the referendum questions. How many questions can you ask? How should the questions be framed? Can you do them successively? How many days? All those things are unclear. So it is possible that somebody could. And we have to be able to be willing to engage those who want to take an action as well, and engage them in conversation. If somebody may act as a lone ranger, if the person files, it means that you have to sit down with the person and see reason. And those are things that we have to deploy as well, I would say. There's another question about how do we reconcile and harmonize previous reports. So if you look at the mandate of the current committee, they are supposed to look at the previous reports, both the Fiajo one, the Chemensa Clara one. And even though the mandate doesn't even talk about the white paper that came before it and all of that, they are still required, and I know that they are looking at all of those. So it's not only a project of synthesis necessarily, but they can show that on many of them there's a consistent national clamor for certain things, and which you can go to. Where there are variances as well, they will justify them as we go along. And then you talk about mobilizing everybody, chiefs. The process has been very consultative, and I think that civil society within us here have also been involved in different projects where we have brought together different constituents around different issues. So the contacts exist, the knowledge exists, how we can map the country exists. Now it's about then coordinating better. I think that's what largely the process is going to look like. The mobilization question. Political parties has to be involved, but we must also be willing to go with and without the political parties. Like I said, this time around, if it fails, we made it fail. So even when there's holdouts, we have to be able to help rally people along. There's no illusion here about the cost of mobilizing. You know, we've tested this very thing before when we went to Mali. We mobilized for 3 months in communities in the northern region. 3 months we were on the ground, going from community to community, just trying to bring people out on the idea of a new constitution for a new generation. Eventually, over 18,000 people came out. So that's significant. And we did it without engaging the political parties. But it took 3 months for only one part of the country. So it has to be consistent, and it's very expensive. Luckily, at the time, we had Open Society to help us. Hopefully, other partners are also able to help support the process going forward. I don't know whether I left any other questions, but maybe you can add on.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. I think there's one important issue that we have to address, and it's very important for the way we communicate this agenda. It is not us versus them. You know, if this constitution works, it works for every Ghanaian. Anybody that finds itself in the jurisdiction of Ghana should benefit. Politicians are complaining every day about the monetization of politics and the burdens that are placed on them. They are conflicted. You know, they want to be in power, so they will do whatever they want to do, you know, to stay. Some are also greedy. They will just, you know, benefit from the system while everybody else, you know, does not benefit. But the change must affect us all. And I think that's where we have to start from when we are having these conversations. We have to have very frank conversations. I mean, when you start thinking about things like galamsey and so on, when the heavy metals seep into the water table and it affects, you know, the food systems, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are in this place, you are going to be affected. So this conversation is not civil society versus politicians, or, you know, and that's where I think when we are communicating this, we have to be very, very clear about that. And for red lines, you know, we fought for right to information law for many, many years. And I recall even on the night of the the whole process when we were trying to pass it. You know, I was in Nairobi at that time, but I was testing feverishly with Honorable Haruna, Oponkroma, still, you know, debating and negotiating on which provisions, you know, is going to go and which are not going to go. So we will have that conversation. But whatever, the supreme interest of Ghanaians must be at the forefront of everybody's mind. It cannot be an architecture that benefits just people personally. That's going to be put on the table. But I think we have to come to a point where we can say that what we are agreeing works for all. But yes, there will be trade-offs. And, you know, often when you start this process, you have your red lines. You know, the issue you raise about ministers and so on, studies upon studies that when you a minister and a parliamentarian, it just doesn't work. They are always absent in parliament, always losing their seats, because doing both jobs is just difficult. So I think we just need to understand, but if you abandon that, what can I get? What guarantees do I get when I am in this system? So I think these are some of the things we are going to look at. Structures, the mobilization really have to go to grassroots. We have to, for example, be able to communicate that if you are in an area, if you are in Labadi, and together with your friends, you want to set up a small constitution club or group that you meet regularly to discuss some of the proposals that have been put in place, set it up, register with us. We have to be able to allow for grassroots mobilization. There are a lot of young people who are interested. They are not able to access and come together, but they meet, they organize, they engage. We need to give, you know, a template for these things to be organic so that we can get on the university campuses. if you want to be able to set some time, and then, we give you a formal process. So we just need to think about it. We have a lot of experience over time. Of course, we have not done a constitutional review process, that goes beyond amendments and so on and so forth. So there are new things we will learn. The last thing I want to talk about is ownership. Yes, we are glad that FCDO is supporting us and other donors might support us. Ghanaians have to own this. If it's 50 CDs, 20 CDs that we are, collecting and mobilizing to support our grassroots groups and so on, to be able to get more education about the proposals that have been put on the table, we should do that. So we will definitely, I think, really getting Ghanaians to own this is important. And that means also financing it, financing the mobilization, financing the engagement. Thank you.
Can I move on, or we can take one? Is there any person? Okay, so maybe the last. Can I see by hands? Okay, Harriet, 1, 2, 3. Bernard at the back. Okay, Daniel.
Thank you. Hello.
Bernard.
Thank you. My name is Bernard Avle. I work with CTFM Channel 1. I've really enjoyed today's conversation, and I've appreciated especially what Oliver did on the complexities with the process. Because a lot of times in the media, the debate is around the content for the review. So this gives the context as against the content. So I think this is very important. And I believe there needs to be some more education for media people around this aspect of the process. That's point number one. Point number two, we've had success with coalitions in the past because typically these coalitions have been on one issue, right to information and the rest of them. This is very complicated. If I were to do a blind vote to say what are the top 3 issues in Ghana's constitution that require review, you'll be surprised at the variety of answers we would get. And the first question proves this. I believe for the coalition to be effective, we also need to do some work on some sort of scale of preference. To say there may be 20 issues for review, but I think somebody made a point around deciding which issues are non-negotiable, which issues are preferences, and which issues are carrots we can offer. That level of clarity within the group is necessary. Otherwise, we would have so-called civil society who will be fighting us because of one issue. So I think a lot of internal work needs to be done around this group or whatever. And of course, civil society represents ordinary Ghanaians. That's number 2. Number 3, to the point of mobilization, I also think because of the way the media is owned and structured, we must think beyond owned media into breaking into digital spaces. So we need to start having secondary school conversations about constitution, right? The word constitution is very, very big, right? What is the ever version for constitution? What does it mean in Ghana? So I think as part of the mobilization strategy, there should be conversations which are podcasts and things outside of traditional big, because what tends to happen is that for these big programs, the elites themselves still come there. But if this is to be truly owned by the people, you want to have students having their own constitutions, let's do a bottom-up sort of thing so that people can only fight for what they believe is theirs. All right? So those are a few points. I'm sure some others have things to say. But from a person who works in the media, I think this coalition is very, very important. And the last thing, it's interesting that 2 of the lead people on the committee are people, Prof. Prempe, CDD, and then Tanko. I don't think Star Ghana and CDD should stay away just because 2 of the principal figures there. It is the credibility of what they've done that has put them there. So I think Star has convening power. Star has a lot of solid people. We shouldn't say because Tanko can recuse himself from the meetings we hold and ask Prof. Khan. But I feel like those 2 organizations are very critical to mobilizing civil society. So the white elephant you mentioned, is it white elephant you called it? Some elephant.
An
I
elephant.
still think those two institutions should be involved because they are very credible in this particular space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard.
So, I am Kojo Ben Sabrompa. I work with Adum TV and Adum FM. Bernard touched on the comment I want to make. I think that going into the grassroots, we should look at the languages that we'll be using. Okay. Because it will not always be in English as we are speaking here. The people should understand the Constitution in their perspective, in their respective languages, so that when they are contributing, they will know exactly what they are talking about. When the time is due for the referendum, it is going to be in English. How are we going to communicate this one to them in their languages so that they understand as to whether they should vote yes or no? Else, somebody will just be going and say, when you go, vote no. All the person knows is that Asieho is no, so he's going to vote Asieho without knowing what exactly he or she is going to vote for. So the language, we should start it now with the Ghanaian languages for them to understand so that when the time is due, they know exactly what they are going to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Harriet's hand was up.
Right, thank you very much. I'm Harriet, New Management in Ghana. I think Oliver made a point about accountability, and I would want him to emphasize that aspect again. That is having a monitoring and accountability mechanism. It's very critical for a coalition or a platform such as what is in the offering, because we need to be able to put out there in the public domain of the credibility of the platform that is going to work on the constitutional review in terms of promoting the processes and the content that comes after. And so please elaborate more on that. We need to understand how we are going to hold ourselves accountable, in this process and make us credible in the eyes of the government and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. My name is Sheila Minkapremo from the Affirmative Action Law Coalition. And I'd also like to commend those who thought of this whole idea, but a lot of work still needs to be done. And I think as Smalley indicated, issues about consensus building is very, very key. And I didn't hear much about lobbying in terms of various constituencies, including even the parliamentarians themselves. We need to look for some champions in there who are into issues. And then from the feedback that is coming, it looks as if the structure maybe may also have to include a community level thing, because you talked about national, regional, and district. But if we really want to reach the grassroots, we should be considering maybe community level sort of grouping so that they can then report to the district, and then at that level, then it's easier to use the different languages, etc., that people are talking about it. And then the issue of financing. I think Star Ghana is good at mobilizing funds. So I think that we should be counting on that strength that they have a lot.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Paul Osekufo. I work with CDD-Ghana. I want to add my voice to also commend my own organization, CDD-Ghana, Star Ghana, and other partners. Oliver, I recognize the presentation you did. I noticed some critical pathways, and we may not have the answers here, but it's important, it's highlighted for reflection. One has to do with the fact that we are considering aligning the referendum with MMDC elections. And that is quite critical, per the presentation you did and the voter turnout that you showed. This is a very important national assignment. And really, if you want to rally citizens around it, enhance patronage, then we need to really think about an alternative around it, because aligning it with the MMDC elections, I doubt whether we may have the turnout needed. And the second issue has to do with the white paper. That has always been quite problematic. We do all the consultations, come out with very good proposals. Then a white paper is issued and it really turns the whole exercise kaput. What kind of remedies are we looking at to counter the white paper? And I think Bernard Avle made a very fantastic point that civil society must begin to have positions, strong positions on some of the reform proposals, so that we will be ahead of government white paper, and we should not wait to react to the white paper. So I think that would be a very good consideration. Then the last point will be how to navigate certain key bottlenecks or roadblocks that may come our way. I'm saying this because I was part of the committee that worked on the Civil Society Committee. Dr. Kwete chaired it, that worked on the local governance reform. And when we got to the situation where the then president didn't support the idea of election on non-partisan basis, it basically ended the whole reform process. So how are we anticipating some of these potential obstacles that may come our way, and how do we mitigate them? It's very important, so we prepare ahead of time. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Steven from Pen Plus Byte. So I want to add to the mobilization effort. The current voters register, almost 55% are young people, right? And in this room right now, as we speak, we are few, you understand? So in mobilizing efforts, I would like to suggest that, if possible, we can have a youth wing coalition, right? Aside this, where we will involve majority of the voices on new media, you understand? Because even though we are also considering the traditional media, I know a couple of people who haven't watched traditional media for like 6 months now. Any news, they go to social media. So we should also be looking at that front and bringing a lot of people on board. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one, I'll take. Oh, there's another lady.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I just add my voice to commending the initial mobilizers of this. It's a very important assignment and a privilege that CSOs have had the opportunity to be here. My name is Matilda. I work with NORSAC in the policy office in Accra. So I wanted to just comment on, I think somebody has mentioned about a critical point to keep the district level. There's also somebody that mentioned the community anti-Sheila. I think that these are very critical, but I wanted to just go the line of the CSOs that once we have room for us to be here as CSOs, can we look beyond CSOs that are centered in Accra? Because once you get CSOs that are concentrated in the districts and communities, then you have a very good mobilization strength, because we have people that have strongholds in the districts and communities and all of that. And then somebody just mentioned a youth wing. We also have what we call the youth networks that are across all the communities now. We have district MOYs, movement of youth. We can leverage on them. I'm very certain that the strategies that you would bring out would spell out the different rules. But I think it's just to highlight so that we don't miss out. Matilda, NORSAC.
Thank you. And then the last one.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Abna Sefa from IDEC. Before I speak on my main points, I would like to second what the gentleman from Pen Plus Byte said. There have been so many. I've taken part in programs whereby the youth and people with disabilities are just few. We talk about inclusivity, but we don't really include them, and they are not even part of the members of the panel. Now, to my main point, I think one of the biggest obstacle we'll face is Ghana's unregulated electoral cycle. Unlike the Scandinavian countries, whereby there's a specific period of time where the political parties can hold their primaries, when the political parties can have their posters up. In Ghana, it's unregulated, and I stand to be corrected. I think the MPP will be holding its primaries in February. When this happens, this can turn the people's attention away from the constitutional review process. No matter our planning, elections just takes the people away, and we forget about developmental policies, the most important. I'm not saying elections are not important, but it takes our mind away from equally important aspects. So we must find a way to ensure that we regulate the election cycle in Ghana so that the laws we want to be changed are actually changed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Eunice, Kojo, and Oliver. This time Eunice will start. And then Auntie Esther.
All right. Thank you very much. I was whispering to Kojo that we have a big task ahead of us. I mean, when we listen to the observations, and I think we invite a lot more people to really work with us, to be committed to what we need to do to get the kind of constitution we would want to have for Ghana. I think I agree with some of the observations, one on the mobilization, and I think the point is we are being challenged to reimagine mobilization. And indeed, there are some experiences within civil society. We have the templates for the right to information law, where we went as deep as to the communities, you know, organizing groups around that. But even before the RTI, we have the domestic violence, we have the affirmative action, and so we will build on those experiences. But there are also some new ways we need to adopt. We have to intensify our presence in the digital spaces. I think there are a lot of people who have those expertise to help us, and I agree perfectly with Bernard that we need to engage students in school, in tertiary, in second cycle, and all of that, even our children in the kindergarten, to really understand what we are doing and can speak about it and be connected. So I think we have a big task of reimagining mobilization for the kind to leverage or to gain the traction that we want on this process. There are a number of things we cannot discuss here, and we haven't discussed them here. So, for example, there's a big question about what is the advocacy strategy, and we can't, answer that here. And that's why when I presented the structure, I said we have the organizing committee, and a lot of the thinking process would happen in that organizing committee. We may even break it down into smaller committees. And so the point about how do we manage compromise, what do we insist on, we haven't yet seen the reports. We have made proposals. We anticipate what would come through, but we don't know. So we need to build that strategy. And we may have different strategies for how we pursue different issues. And that's a lot of work. So I agree with Mauli. We need to do that. And we didn't think we were going to do that in this space. And so when we invite people into the organizing committee, we are sure that we will bring in those expertise. And I think the last one, when I look at the room, I think we have more young people in this room. I mean, if we take the National Youth Policy as a reference. Youth is between 15 and 35. And I think there are more young people. But I think the point you are mentioning is we need young people to drive this. And so how we move forward, we should be deliberate in targeting young people. I think that, and also different people, women and girls and persons with disability. I think that's response to the lady's question about where are we, children and youth in all of this. And I think I challenge us to also offer what support you can give instead of us inviting, So I think that's great. The last thing, I think the point I made about the elephant in the room, I need to clarify it. What I meant was that the Professor Prempe and Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, they are members of the Constitutional Review Committee, which is leading this process, and they are serving in that committee in their individual capacity. So they do have opportunities to reflect, their experiences, their perspectives into that process. But what we are doing is separate from the role they are playing on the committee. And they are serving in that committee because ordinarily it shouldn't be a problem, but there could be questions about why should we be doing this when we have our executive directors already in the committee and should be able to. So I wanted to clarify that. Bernard is nodding, so I know he understands the clarification now. Thank you.
Oliver, you have some few questions.
Just a quick one. There was a question about accountability. And I mean, accountability also comes from some of the things that have already been said here about being representative enough in terms of the structures that we put together. It's also about the messaging, that we are consistent in terms of how we speak, what is it we are saying in different spaces, and who is leading that conversation. So there's an element of authenticity as well about who is speaking to who and who is trying to mobilize who in those spaces. I think those are questions that need to be fleshed out for ourselves. But also ensuring that we are meeting the objectives that we have set for ourselves broadly means that we must have an internal, some sort of M&E process that looks and says, no, we are hitting this, we are missing out on this, and things like that. And this is a critical feedback I think we should have. There's one question, but I'm blanking, so it's fine.
No. Okay, so...
sorry, the young people, yes. Sorry, and I think that in many respects, the initial folks that have come together to think about this is also a reflection of an idea of being intentional about young people being on the platform. I think that even though my grade says a different message, Democracy Hub kind of envisages itself as being in the space of working with young people. We have worked with Pen Plus Bytes. They are partners in crime and we are raising revenue for our protests. They have a platform that we continue to use, which has been helpful. But yeah, so we have a responsibility as partners within this to think about how do we ensure that more young people can be brought on board also in the process. Thank you.
And because I was the one coordinating, I made sure more young people are. If I'm involved, there's no way we are not going. Kojo, you want to add on? Yes. Okay.
No, this is for Dr. Kwete because Dr. Kwete will be summarizing in Ghana at the end, so that we start the local language. Okay. Yes, thank you.
So we have some partners who are going to make comments. Some have already spoken. So, Dabi. So Dr. Kwete from my dad.
Well, I think I just want to make a point here. Obviously, we are seeing the time constraints and how that is also pushing us into some difficult timelines and phases of our politics. I just hope that in considering what we are discussing about, we would come to the idea that probably the Constitutional Review Committee is temporary, and so we need a permanent commission or something to look at this. There's a lot of good work to be done, but the time constraints and the pressures on the people doing this work. And therefore, I thought that Vomawo was a very young man when they were looking at the first commission, the Fiajo Commission. And now I see him with quite a lot of gray hairs. So I'm asking Vomawo, if he hadn't had all this time to grow, how would he now be talking about this? I think the strongest point here for me is that it's time to move from ad hoc committees to permanent ones so that they can work on some of these things continuously. And that is what constitutions are forever, if not coups. And we cannot be doing this ad hoc thing. I mean, that for me is what this conversation highlights. Nina, ohimane mieche, kojo asante. Enumu eba himane mi, ni a boy in school can be ya. Shinke ba shingmene enye viega. They were.
That's all. Okay, so we'll take some comment from some of our partners as well. Amnesty International is here, NetRight, FIDA, and then Ivan Smith, I can see you from the media as well. So just a minute, and then we can officially declare the platform launch. Ernesto, I can see you. It's good to be here. So who would like to go first?
Hi, good morning. Genevieve here from Amnesty. Yes, so I think this is a great initiative. Amnesty has been working a lot with CDD-Ghana, Oliver, and the likes regarding the constitutional review process. In terms of youth, Amnesty, some of you don't know, Amnesty has about 8,000 members in Ghana, and half of them are youth members. So I think that's a very great opportunity. They're quite active as well, by the way, so that would be great. And yeah, well, as usual, we're here to support and really play an active role on the CSO platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are happy to partner ourselves at Joy News and CDD and the rest of the groups who are working on this who've been partnerships. We've been in a partnership in executing a lot of the projects in the past. Amplifying the work for me is important, and that's where the media comes in. We have to amplify. We have a lot of community engagement currently happening on some of the key issues. Over the last few years, the media itself has swayed into the area of a lot of advocacy and public interest work. And we are now also becoming civil society organizations that beginning to attract partnership funding from FCDO. We've been working with them for a while, from Star Ghana. So we built some capacity there, and I think it's now appropriate to deploy this to this national cause in our constitutional evolution. So we are very happy to participate.
Is there any partner I have left out? Let me see you by hand. Ernesto?
Thank you very much, Kate. Good morning to all of us. We are happy to be partners in this project. Personally, I've been involved for the past 25 years, and my organization, the Economic Fighters League, past 9 years. We have a registered membership of over 16,000, so I'm happy that we can collaborate on this front to see that we have a constitution deserving of the Ghanaian people. Thanks.
The youth group, we invited YOTA, Youth Bridge Foundation, FOSDA, Youth Advocates Ghana. Okay, I just wanted to make that point. Oh, which Youth Bridge Foundation, okay. I think I'm going to give you the last one. And then.
Yeah, all right. So we are also grateful for amplifying the youth voice and also to partner in this, because as we see the population in Ghana, very important role, and we representing the youth is also a great thing to.
Good day, everybody. I'm not sure what time it is. It's still morning. Good morning, everybody. Partners in democracy, ladies and gentlemen. I have had an amazing morning. I've learned a lot. I think one thing that's coming to me is how we are going to leverage the diversity of the strength of the diversity of civil society. Oliver, I'm intrigued by the notion of a mixed drafting initiative. Sometimes leaving it to Attorney General has had me despairing somewhat. And then also the issue of solid championship beyond the president are some of the things I'm taking away with me here. I'm not sure in what capacity I've been invited to perform this very critical role, but I'm going to give it a very good shot. I think today we are not here merely to unveil a new initiative, but maybe, pardon my use of the word, ignite a movement rooted in the belief that the Constitution of Ghana is not just a legal document, but a living covenant between the people and the state, reflecting our aspirations, protecting our freedoms, and evolving with our democracy. And this platform, which has been spearheaded by the entities that have spoken to us, Star Ghana, Center for Democratic Development, Democracy Hub, and all of your good selves, has been born out of the shared conviction that civil society must be at the heart of constitutional reform. I mean, we should not be there on the sidelines, not as spectators, but as active co-creators and indeed architects of the future that we want for ourselves and our children. Constitutional change is not just a technical exercise. As the presentations here have indicated, it's deeply political, deeply social, and deeply cultural, and we must be deliberate about ensuring that it's inclusive, transparent, and above all, people-driven. Now, the Constitutional Review Committee has been diligently working since it was established, and want to commend them for their commitment. And by the caliber of people on the committee, we anticipate rigor and sensitivity. And again, the persons from civil society who have been invited, whose integrity, experience, and dedication to democratic values cannot be questioned, indicates or suggests to us that the voices of ordinary Ghanaians will not be lost in the corridors of power. However, it is our responsibility to complement whatever it is that they're doing. And through civil society, through this platform, civil society should be able to, let me borrow Evans Menson's word, amplify the voices of citizens, especially those who would have been left behind in shaping constitutional priorities. The platform should also help us to coordinate civil society efforts. Very often we lose out because of the disparate interventions that civil society make. I mean, falling over ourselves, contradicting ourselves, shortchanging ourselves, and so on. So that coordinate our efforts to engage with policymakers, legal experts, political actors, and so on. We should also use the platform to educate and inform. And as Bernard said, he talked about, educating the media on the things that, but I think it's the larger civil society, not just the media, who need to be better informed about these things. And then hold ourselves and our democratic institutions accountable to the principles of citizens' participation. The decentralized approach that has been alluded to right out some of these fractures that threaten the very fabric of our national unity. So may I say that I'm hoping that this process would help with the healing, a space where we can rise above party lines and ideological camps to ask what kind of Ghana we want to build together. A forum where disagreement is not a threat, but a tool for deeper understanding, where diversity of thought is not to be feared, but to be embraced, where civil society will lead by example, modeling the kind of inclusive, respectful, and forward-looking engagement that our democracy desperately needs. So we invite every Ghanaian, urban, rural, young, old, to engage, to question, to propose, and to demand because of us. In Kwame Nkrumah's words, the best way of learning to be an independent sovereign state is to be an independent sovereign state. So we need to take ownership, and we need to shape it with courage, wisdom, and unity. And together, we can build a constitution that reflects the Ghana that we are, and also the Ghana that we dare to become. So on this note, it is my humble duty, my pleasure, my privilege, I'm not sure my local standing in this matter, but to declare this platform duly launched. Thank you, and God bless us all. Thank you.
there. I think we should have brought champagne or something. Okay, thank you so much, Auntie Esther. We'll bring our meeting to a close. Kojo will give us some closing remarks and the next steps, what is expected of the platform.
All right, thank you very much, Vera. Are we afraid? If we work hard, as for this work, you just have to work hard, though. You can't for once even have a doubt that you are going to succeed. Just be prepared to work hard, that's all. Commit yourself for the next 3 years, and we'll get this done fully, including the entrenched provisions. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. All right, so as we, Eunice said, there's a lot of conversation that has to follow this conversation. We don't have to meet physically all the time. We can meet online because we really need to move quick. I would even love to be able to launch these platforms regionally, launch it district level, and so on, just as a way of advertising and publicizing, the platform for citizens everywhere. So there, you start hearing from us in terms of organizing some meetings. We need to set up our steering committees. We need to set up, our regional committees and platforms, our youth platforms, our women platforms. As I said, even area groups, if where two or three are gathered, we will just, allow you to form your own groups and have your own meetings. I think what we have to do is be able to provide as much information and education so that, as I said, the process can be organic and allow people to begin to have conversations about this. As I said, we need to finance this from Ghanaians because we need to own it. This is about our future, and the power of collective action can help us overcome some of these funding gaps. And then we just have to be more innovative. As I said, we don't have to meet physically all the time, but we can have very good conversations at various. Maybe we start some Sunday schools and things like that, right? So this is the beginning of the struggle, a very long journey. So drink some water and prepare for a hard journey. But I trust me that at the end we will succeed. Do you believe me? All right. Okay. All right. So just to say thank you. Have a good weekend. I will not stress you too much over the weekend, but from Monday you'll hear from us, and then we'll begin. And all right. As for Oliver and for the weekend, we'll still have to talk. So, all right. Okay. All the best, and thanks Vera for moderating the session. Everybody have a very good weekend. All right. Bye bye.